What's up, everybody? Welcome to the First Take podcast. We are coming to New Orleans for the NBA All-Star Game. Catch us live this Friday, February 17th. The location is the fourth floor of the Riverview Room. Let's try that again. 3, 2, 1. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the First Take podcast. First Take is coming to New Orleans for the NBA All-Star Game. Catch us live Friday, February 17th. The location is the fourth floor of the Riverview Room on Decatur Street. We'll have special guests, giveaways, doors open 7:30 a.m. local. Come on down and watch us in person. But here's what's going on today. How worried do you think LeBron James is with Kevin Love out for 6 weeks? Stephen A. gives us the latest on the possible mega fight between Mayweather and McGregor. And would you trade a first-round pick for Jimmy G? And Mel Kiper joins us to talk about his latest mock draft. The First Take Pod starts right now. Hello! What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for being with us on First Take. Stephen A. Smith, Max Kellerman in the house. Hi, guys.
Hello, Mom.
Oh, stop it. You are unbelievable.
You want to tell them why you're looking like that?
How much love do I show you?
First of all,
do I look out for you always?
I don't know these things. I don't have any factual evidence to back up her proclamations, Max Kellerman. But what I will say is this: there is a problem. You have to understand. I am the youngest of 6.
Yes.
I am the baby, and I don't appreciate when my mama, sits up there and takes time out of my love, takes away love from me to tell me, I think you should be a little nicer to Molly. Don't raise your voice when it comes to her.
I love Mama. Who should we always listen to in life?
Am I the
Who's
baby?
Who's your number one? Mama.
Let me be very clear. Let me just put it on First Street, Max.
Don't raise your voice to her.
I'm going to let you know, Max. I am spoiled. I'll be the first to admit it. I am spoiled when it comes to my mama. I don't like when anybody, and I do mean anybody, gets more love from my mama than me. It's a problem. You my enemy today because of that. Oh,
stop it. Last thing, I want America to know, I always have both of their backs. Love for both of them, and they know it.
Whatever. My mother has your back. We have a problem. I'm just telling you right now.
Speaking of love, Kevin Love underwent arthroscopic knee surgery on his left knee and is expected to miss 6 weeks. With Kevin Love out for the next month and a half, reporters asked LeBron at practice if he would have to step up with Love being out. LeBron said he never stepped down. Without Love, LeBron and the Cavs still beat the Timberwolves despite Andrew Wiggins scoring 14 points. King James, what's on your mind?
Listen, I'm their leader, I'm their commander, and it's up to me to set the tempo and set the pace every single day, set the example every day. And, it sucks for us right now having two of our guys out, and that's, JR and also Kev. But I got to make sure these guys is locked in and focused because nobody's going to feel sorry for us. And like I said, if I'm in the lineup, we got a chance. We always got a chance every night, and I'm going to get these guys mentally focused every night.
No love, Stephen A. How worried do you think LeBron really is?
I think he's significantly worried, but I don't think he's worried about himself. So LeBron, what I love about the quote, Max, is that LeBron James made it very, very clear. I ain't worried about me. I ain't never stepped down. I don't need to step up. I'm coming ready every single night. And there's no doubt that he is because he's the greatest player in the world. We get that. When I said weeks ago that he was scared, when I alluded to him being worried, when I'm talking about him being worried now, I'm not talking about worried about himself. I'm talking about him worried about the rest of the troops around him and whether or not they're going to measure up to snuff when it comes time for that NBA Finals. And by the way, just as an aside, the Toronto Raptors picking up Serge Ibaka yesterday, that makes things very, very interesting in the East. It doesn't mean that Cleveland is not the favorites. It doesn't mean that Cleveland won't win. But their road to the title has gotten a little bit harder now. Let's not ignore that. Washington's coming. You can't ignore Washington. You can't ignore Boston. And now you can't ignore the Toronto Raptors. But back to Cleveland, Max, it comes down to this. If you're LeBron James, you're thinking about one thing and one thing only, June. And who's going to be there. And we all believe it to be the Golden State Warriors. And in his heart of hearts, he believes it to be the Golden State Warriors. The Houston Rockets are not good enough. They got a superstar in James Harden, good shooters around him, could be a threat, but they're not better than the Warriors. And San Antonio, as well old as they are, they're a bit slow. You're thinking about Golden State. You're looking at KD and you're saying, do we measure up? And without Love, first of all, with Love, you had question marks about it. Now without Love, definitely a huge question mark. I think LeBron is worried, and I think you'll hear about him talking to folks and saying, now more so than ever, we need to emphasize getting Carmelo Anthony.
I don't think he's more worried than he was before Kevin Love went out, because Kevin Love is going to be back with a little time to spare in the regular season, most likely. And guess what? He'll be rested, as will J.R. Smith, who's being evaluated very soon. And he originally was supposed to be back in like March.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, maybe, let's see, maybe a little bit sooner. Even if it isn't a little bit sooner, he will also be back. In addition to picking up Korver, they get J.R. Smith back, also rested. So actually, the effect of this is that you have key pieces to your team that helped you win a championship last year coming back in time to defend the title, and they will be rested. And you're really looking at the Warriors. Are they going to lose in the East? As you mentioned, Serge Ibaka, Toronto got better, Boston's good. The Wizards have been playing very, very well, and John Wall is probably the most talented guard who's not on the Cavs in the East. But none of those teams are going to beat the Cavs. None of them are going to beat Cleveland and LeBron. Every once in a blue moon, a powerhouse team with MVP caliber players like the Lakers in 04 will get upset by a team that's put together just the right way like the Pistons in 04. But I don't see that team in the East, and I don't see this Cavs team as complacent. I don't think LeBron is worried based on this injury.
Couple of things. And you know what? This is where you being the young buck that you are.
You guys are like 2 years apart.
The elder statesman, Would you stop it, Molly? Would you stop it, Molly Wood, please, and let me talk to you?
Go ahead.
Okay. Here's the deal. You got to remember 80s. Remember when the Nets upset Dr. J. Julius Erving? It happened. Remember when the Red Sox came back from 3-0, beat the Yankees? It happened. Remember when the Los Angeles Lakers lost to Ralph Sampson and the Houston Rockets with that catch and tip in or whatever it is, the alley-oop, finger roll in it at the last possible second. Rockets, these kind of things happen. So what I'm saying to you is that in the sport of basketball, it's not even – I get your point about the upset because I'm not assuming LeBron James is going to allow the Cleveland Cavaliers to be upset. But the point that I think that you need to pay attention to more so than anything else is the road to the finals, not the finals.
A little rougher.
Because if it's a little rougher, the more it takes out of them, the more endangered they are. That's why when you think about an injury to Love, when you think about an injury to JR, even though they're going to come back speculating in March or whatever the case may be, if you don't figure out a way, now I am in support of LeBron James sitting down and getting some rest and not leading the league in minutes played and all of this other stuff, because now that he's going to have to carry even more of a load, you got to make sure he's fresh for that postseason run. And the more work, Max, he's got to put in, the more trouble.
I thought Ty Lue should have been sitting LeBron long ago and decreasing his minutes. And I think the same thing should have been done with Kyrie and Kevin Love, to tell you the truth. But again, you are getting probably by the time the playoffs start, at least by the second round, you're probably getting the best rested version of Kevin Love. And as far as the Warriors go, you could say, well, it's a rougher road, and that maybe takes a little bit out of you, and that slightly decreases their chances. But actually, the West is still tougher than the East. The Warriors still have tougher sledding than the Cavs do. And even on neutral, if everything was neutral and neither one had to play any other teams, Warriors are going to be favored anyway. They got more firepower. It would be an upset for the Cavs to defend their title, period. So what gives them the best chance? Actually, if I could draw it up, I might say, well, you need LeBron because you need to win games. He can't miss 6 weeks because all of a sudden maybe, you fall to the bottom half of the playoff seeding. But ideally it would be you have your big three. One or two of them will get a nice long rest. That's what's happening.
Let's not forget, Max, Eastern Conference Finals. I had to cover it. Now, Toronto's a phenomenal city. It's rough getting there. But once you get there, it's very, very international. I mean, there's no question. But the point that I'm trying to make, because I digress, the point that I'm trying to make to you is that they were down 2-0. They came back, tied it up 2-2. It would have been easier. Now, it ultimately ended up not hurting the Cavs. But at the same time, if you got 2 games with Bismarck Biyombo, who's now in Orlando, Valanciunas was out, and it's really DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry, okay? Well, then now that you got a Serge Ibaka, now you got Isaiah Thomas playing lights out in Boston, and they're up and coming, and they really, really look special. Now that you've got the Washington Wizards, Scott Brooks doing a hell of a job with them. So is John Wall.
Who will be with us Friday in New Orleans.
Who will be with us Friday. When you look at what's going on right now, I believe Cleveland's coming out of the East. But the road to the finals this year might be tougher than last year's was.
Probably will be.
Things just got a little more interesting, potentially at the Cavs' expense. That's why I pose this next subject to you. Let's take it a step further. So reports were swirling that LeBron James pushed the Cavs to trade for Carmelo Anthony. Then James vehemently denied it. And this was before we heard the news of Love even being sidelined. So Love also dealt with back injuries in addition to the left knee and has 3 years left on a $110 million deal. Max.
Yep.
So should LeBron now insist that the Cavs trade for Carmelo Anthony?
No. And I think that would, now, if you're talking about the long-range prospects of the team, that's another story. But we're talking about, as we know, defending your title in June. Mm-hmm. The answer is no. What they really need, what Kevin Love has brought them this season, he's played very well this season. This is the best I've seen him play since he's been on Cleveland, right?
Okay.
Like, since he went to Cleveland, I haven't seen him play as consistently well as he has this year. They need excellent rebounding out of him. He's done that. They need excellent passing. He's done that on an elite level. And long-range shooting. He's done that. Now, it's not that Carmelo can't rebound, and I've seen him find open teammates in the past when he's been the center of an offense, when he's been playing well and surrounded by shooters certain seasons. He can rebound, he can do those things, and he can shoot. But he's not a deadly marksman from the outside. He's not a great rebounder. I know he's called a small forward. He's really a hybrid small forward, power forward at this stage in his career. I think actually he's best at the 4, not the 3. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you talk about his passing, it is what it is. He doesn't do any of the things that Kevin Love does that makes that Cavs machine go. So now he does a lot of other things, but that's a major piece to integrate. Carmelo will wind up the offense. LeBron will conduct the offense largely through Carmelo oftentimes, and that involves integrating a piece that really changes your whole offense in the middle of a season when you're trying to defend your title.
I disagree with you, Max. I think that if you're LeBron James, you have to insist on getting Melo. And here's why. You can't trust the health of Kevin Love. And the reason why you can't trust the health of Kevin Love is because, as I reported on numerous occasions right here on this show, for months, they had been concerned about the health of Kevin Love. Now, LeBron and the Cavs are slick in this regard. LeBron is telling the truth when he says he didn't run upstairs and say, get Melo at all costs, even if it means getting rid of Love. He didn't do all of that stuff. That's fair. He's right to get upset with people trying to attach that to him because he's got to be a leader in that locker room. And how can you be a leader if you're going behind people back and saying to get rid of them? That's just something ethically you simply don't do. But having said all of that, you can sit up there and say, these are our weaknesses. This is what needs to happen, because if it doesn't happen, this is the predicament that we're going to find ourselves in. Now, you got some folks out there that believe that LeBron is just trying to create a narrative because they're already loaded because they got Kyle Lowry and J.R. Smith is going to come back and Kevin Love is going to come back.
Kyle Korver.
You're right. Kyle Korver. You got to remember something. J.R. Smith's injury was a very freakish kind of injury. You don't know what he's going to be like. Not to mention the fact that he's spotty. He'll show up one game, disappear the next. You don't know that. Okay? I like J.R., but he is spotty. You look at Kevin Love. As good as I think he is and as fond as I am of Kevin Love, what happened to him in the finals? You've documented that on many occasions where he was absent. And so when you look at it from that perspective, Max, even though you got Kyle Korver, he's a catch-and-shoot guy. LeBron James, 55% of his assists at one point this season was off of catch-and-shoot threes. We get that. But the flip side to it is that Kyle Korver is a huge defensive liability, and Kyle Korver doesn't have ball handling skills. And because you don't have ball handling skills, that's where you prioritize. You got to take into consideration who's going to spell for LeBron, not just when he's on the bench, but also when he's on the court. Melo can actually handle. Melo could actually take the ball off the dribble. And Melo, like Magic Johnson said yesterday, is the one guy that would sit up there and say, it's 5 minutes, it's 4 minutes, it's 3 minutes, it's 2 minutes, even if it's 1 minute. Man, give me the damn ball. Move out the way. I got this. He's made for that. And what have I said to you on many occasions, Max? Who would I pick for the first 46 minutes of any game? It would be LeBron. Mm-hmm. I said, but the last 2 minutes, there's a few names that I would throw out there.
Kyrie's pretty good in the last 2 minutes, too, by the way.
I agree with that. But what I'm talking about is getting you to that point, meaning LeBron would get Melo to that point. Do we have any doubt that LeBron James is going to make sure you in 99% of your games in the last 3 minutes of a game? Hell yes, he will. And at that moment, you give it to Melo. You can't do that with Love.
I would say
that's the problem.
I would say this about that point, because basketball today is almost split into two camps. I mean, there's overlap, but there's the one camp that really likes the idea of the closer.
Right.
When it comes down to it, it's still old school.
I'm all about the closer.
It's always been who's the best player on the court, because in the closing minutes, the best player at crunch time, at least, is going to win you the game. And there's the other camp that says, which is why Kevin Durant went to Golden State, whoever's the open man, if you're playing correctly, is going to take the shot. Furthermore, if you're not so worried about iso ball, maybe it doesn't come down to the last possession. Maybe you're actually more efficient. I would say this. Yes, you need some guys who can handle the ball, who can take you off the dribble. If you don't already have that on your team, a guy like Carmelo or even a guy like Jamal Crawford, although he doesn't post up and stuff, but in those moments, if you have a guy like that coming off the bench, even if he makes you less efficient and all that stuff, he can go get a shot for you when you need it. You got LeBron and Kyrie on this team. You got two guys who can do that.
Yeah, but again, you're looking at it from a micro perspective. You're thinking about them in the NBA Finals in that moment. I'm thinking about what they do to exert themselves leading up to the moment. That's the concern because of the injuries. If everything was in a vacuum and it was all about that moment, you're right. But the problem is that with JR down, with Kevin Love down, with the added minutes that LeBron has had to tack on, along with the added responsibilities, with the fragility from the past of a Kyrie Irving, what you have is all of those situations that lead you to question how ready, not ready because they're going to be ready to perform, but how worn out are they going to be when the moment arrives. So you have to look out for them through the process, and that's where you talk about
health. You talk about health.
Sure.
Carmelo's had a bad knee. Carmelo's older than Kevin Love. But in the recent past, he's older than Kevin Love. He has a huge contract. You got to move money to get Carmelo back. Who's that going to be if not Kevin Love? Tristan Thompson?
That's true.
Then you look at what J.R. Smith brought. I'd mentioned what Kevin Love brought, the passing, the rebounding, and the sharpshooting. It's not just shooting from J.R. Smith. It sounds funny to say, but before he got hurt, he had been for like a season the best perimeter defender on the team. If I was a Cavs fan, I'd be looking for a perimeter defender who can, ideally to be the same guy who could handle the ball off the bench.
You have a perimeter defender in Iman Shumpert. It's just that he gives you nothing offensively. But defensively, he's that perimeter guy. You usually can't find both. And so what I'm saying to you is this. What this really comes down to is you're trying to win the title now. And then what you can do is you can adjust, because when you have LeBron and Kyrie as cornerstones, you can adjust when you have more time to adjust. But if you're trying to go after the title now, my question to you would be this, Max. Are you putting your money on an injured Kevin Love coming back healthy and ready, or are you going to roll with a Melo? Me, I would sit up there if I were Cleveland. If I were Cleveland and I could trade Kevin Love to New York right now, despite injury, if I could trade him right now for Melo, I would do it.
Okay.
I would do it.
Me too, but that's because I'd be conceding the title this year. I've seen exactly the opposite as you. If you move Kevin Love for Melo, you're saying, okay, we don't have enough time to get this done. But going forward, we have an even better big three than what we had.
And just to crystallize,
potentially,
that's what Max is saying. He wouldn't do it if you're trying to win a title now. I would do it because I'm trying to win it.
So we agree to disagree.
I believe
I'll take arrested Kevin Love, sharpshooting, passing, and crashing the boards.
I believe that Carmelo Anthony right now, instead of Kevin Love, gives the Cavs a better chance to win the title this year.
To the NFL we go. Quarterbacks in the NFL are not exactly easy to find these days, which is why so many people think the Patriots' backup Jimmy Garoppolo could be very tempting trade bait for teams in need of a quarterback this offseason. Garoppolo led New England to a 2-0 record while Tom Brady was serving a suspension before suffering a shoulder injury. Our NFL analyst Tom Waddle of the Waddle and Sylvie Show on ESPN 1000 in Chicago.
Great to see you all.
Good to have you on, man.
Thanks for
How you doing, buddy?
Doing well.
Rumor is that you said that he is worth a first-round pick, Jimmy Garoppolo. Please tell us why.
You know what Jimmy's worth? Jimmy's worth whatever some NFL team's willing to pay him. I'll use a real estate analogy. Mm-hmm. If you put your house on the market, what's it worth? It's worth what someone's willing to pay you for that house. The appraisal of that house may be one thing. Somebody may be able to or willing to pay you more, maybe pay you less. I think if you look at Jimmy, the appraised value of Jimmy Garoppolo in a trade is probably a 2 and change. But I would be shocked if an NFL team didn't approach the New England Patriots and offer a first-round pick. And I'll use the Chicago Bears as an example. I believe the Bears, after 8 years, will part company with Jay Cutler. And I know Stephen will yell about this in a second, and for good reason. I think the Bears have decided it's the right decision for them. I think Jay Cutler could benefit from a change of scenery as well. I believe they will pursue Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think they hope that they could probably get him for a second and change. But if your personnel guys do their due diligence and the intel tells you that Jimmy is your answer at the quarterback position for the next 7 to 10 years, then I suggest that there's no price that is too steep to pay for that guy. Now, the one issue here is you don't get the benefit of the rookie contract. So there's money involved. But again, the NFL, you're a team, you're flush with cash, and you've had a quarterback problem forever. If you think Jimmy is the guy for the next 7 to 10 years, I wouldn't want to pay the third pick, but if I have to.
Well, first of all, let me get mellow and not yell and say this in a very monotone voice. My issue with what you're saying is when you use the words like, anything and whatever it takes. Sort of, I'm paraphrasing here, whatever it takes. Mm-hmm. Like whether it's a first round, whatever it requires, you go ahead and you do it. What has Jimmy Garoppolo done to prove, in your estimation, that he's worth more than a Deshaun Watson? 2 NFL games?
Well, I would start with the fact that he was a second-round pick in 2014, so there was some feeling out there that he was a quality quarterback. Mm-hmm. I would also suggest that there should be some value attached to the fact that he's been in a meeting room. Whatever he didn't know at Eastern Illinois, which was a smaller program, I think he learned the last 3 years in the meeting room with Tom Brady and Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick. It is a small sample size. I get it. It's just 2 games, like what I saw in that small sample size. I'm not here to tell you that if I was the general manager of the Bears or the Browns or the 49ers, that is exactly what I would do. But if I had the conviction and my football intel told me he was my answer, I wouldn't have any problem pulling the trigger on that deal.
Got a couple things I want to dissect in your argument, although we agree that if I ran a team, I thought he was the guy, first-round pick. I'll explain that in a second. First, the real estate analogy, highest bidder. I think when we say, is he worth a first-round pick, when you talk about the highest bidder, this is the problem with free agency. A free agent goes to the team that bid the most, not always worth the money. Right. If you took the average bid, it would probably be more in line with the actual intrinsic value of the player rather than the team that, by definition, overpaid for the guy, right? They at least paid more than anyone else. That's the first thing about Garoppolo. But I do think he's worth a first-rounder, Stephen A., and here's why. He was drafted in the second round by Bill Belichick.
Right.
Since then, he has improved his stock. So it's at least high second round. And the only argument against it is, hey, if he's so good, why is Belichick trading him, right?
Why should we trust any quarterback that's played for Bill Belichick? What have they done once they've departed?
Well, I think you have to deal with all of these as individual cases. I mean, Matt Castle hadn't started a game since high school. Matt Castle was a later round pick. Ryan Mallett had issues coming out of Arkansas. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a better player to start with. So that would be my first argument. Yeah, absolutely. If Bill Belichick is not willing to keep you, it raises some questions. But if I'm sold, I'm sold. I'm not going to be scared out of my convictions that he could be my answer.
The flip side of that with Belichick is if he's not willing to trade you for a second rounder, if he'll only accept the first rounder, doesn't that indicate that the guy is worth a first round pick?
I don't know about that. It's poker. It's poker because we're talking about Bill Belichick here. Bill Belichick has been known to hoodwink people in the past. He sits there and gets rid of guys. Listen, Bill Belichick is an individual that has proven his greatness as far as I'm concerned. There's nothing to debate that. But we can't sit here and just talk about the greatness of Bill Belichick and then ignore it when it comes to a particular talent that he has, not taking into account the impact that he may have had on that talent that another coach may not be conditioned to, another system may not be conditioned to, another team may not be conditioned to. We have to pay attention to those things. We can't ignore it. Tom Brady is special. He's special on another level. He has proven that. But when a guy like Jacoby Brissett can come up in there and win a football game, okay, as a third-round pick, if I remember correctly, we have to look at that and say, that's Bill Belichick. That's what we did. We talked about Bill Belichick. We talked about it being the system. But then when Jimmy Garoppolo, we want to step aside, and we got people here, Tom, calling him Jimmy G, as if he's earned
I'm calling Garoppolo. Look, if Tom Brady can do what I think he can do and what Bill Belichick thinks he can do, and I think he lasts longer in New England and plays at a higher level maybe than Max, I think he's got 3 years. If you don't trade Jimmy now, you lose his value. You may lose him via free agency unless you decide to franchise him after 2017. Bill Belichick's a great businessman. If he truly believes that Tom Brady is going to play at this level for an extended period of time,
you keep saying Watson. He's a shiny name that makes you think, oh, Garoppolo. Trubisky might go like third overall. Do we know more about him or Jimmy G?
I'm going to be dealing with Mel Kiper about that in a little while because I don't understand that either. But I want to transition. May I?
Yeah, please.
May I?
Please. This is your baby.
But first of all, the voice of Chicago here. Deeply appreciate the great work that you put forth. So, listen, here's the deal, man. Jay Cutler. This dude, I don't know how y'all do it. I applaud you for going to work every day having to talk about this dude. I mean, I just think he is the worst. And I'm not talking about his talent because I know as a physical talent, I know he's got all the tools. But the reason I've called him the worst when it comes to quarterbacks in the NFL, Tom, is because I find him to be leaderless. I find him to be non-inspirational. A matter of fact, he's like, I don't even know what to consider him. He's like he drains and sucks the life out of a franchise as far as I'm concerned. How do y'all deal with Jay Cutler?
You hate him so hard, don't you? You hate him so hard.
I despise him as a player.
Isn't he so dramatic, Tom?
I think the leadership criticism is warranted. And I think that it was more warranted earlier in his career in Chicago. And I think if you talk to his previous teammates from his initial spin there, Brian Urlacher,
yep.
Lance Briggs, and Olin Kreutz, guys that were strong voices and great players inside that locker room. I think there was some resentment that Jay was going to come in and all of a sudden take them to places they hadn't been. So I don't think there was a real good mesh at that point. I think the last 3-4 years there in Chicago, there's a different story. And I think if you talk to the guys that are there in that locker room now, they tell you a different story. I think the fact that he's older, he's married, he's got 3 kids, I think he's a different guy. I think it's valid criticism. I think that is very valid criticism. On the field, I personally don't believe he is Satan in a football uniform. There has been some good, there has been some bad. I think 2 issues exist with Jay. First of all, the potential has never intersected with the production. The abundance of raw talent leads you to believe he's going to be better than he is. It hasn't been just his fault. There have been times when he hasn't been protected.
He's mid-30s now. It's not like suddenly he's going to wake up and be amazing.
True, but I think that he's a guy, if you put him in a confined system and you have a very strong offensive coordinator, I think he can play effectively. And I think 2015 was a good example of that with Adam Gase.
But my issue with anybody who comes to the defense of him in any way is does it correlate with what we conditionally say about a quarterback? We don't just talk about their ability. We talk about their ability to lead men. We talk about their ability to inspire and to galvanize the troops around them, because the position is so important that if they are missing something so flagrantly, that it could literally drain the life out of their team. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about.
I'll say something that'll blow a gasket for you right now. I just want to ask you this, and then I want to see Stephen A's reaction. Can you talk about Jay Cutler's toughness?
Oh, I think Jay Cutler gets a hugely bad rap about his toughness. And I think if you ask players who did not actually see eye to eye with him in that locker room, and Brian Urlacher is a good example. Maybe Brian and Jay didn't see eye to eye on a lot of different things. We have Brian on our radio show weekly during the football season back in Chicago, and Brian will attest to Jay Cutler's toughness. That is one thing, Stephen A., with all due respect, that I do not agree with you on. I believe Jay Cutler has lived through some horrendous football beatings on the field. Mm-hmm. I think 2 years ago he came back from a torn groin in just a week. Mm-hmm. I know this is an issue that probably my stance isn't popular, but his toughness is something I have never, ever questioned.
Well, before we get into that, would you please show the video? I mean, the NFC Championship game, what is it, 2010? All right, when it's 2010.
Oh, no.
Now, he couldn't backpedal in the pocket, but he could damn sure pedal on a bicycle. Now, let me tell you something, Tom.
Do you think that's an athletic move on a bicycle?
Excuse me.
Well, yeah.
Excuse me. You trying to tell me it's a Super Bowl berth on the line, and you can't backpedal in the pocket, but you could get on a bicycle?
Let me ask you, I think it's a dangerous thing to do, to look at somebody's injury and then project what they can and they can't do.
Fair enough.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Le'Veon Bell, we all think he's a great player and a tough guy.
Yes.
Tapped out after a series and a half in the AFC title game with a groin injury. I don't think that he tapped out.
Running back is different than a quarterback. You know that better than me, Tom.
I know, but you have to, Stephen A., you have to have your base to throw the football. I'll give you another one. Same year, Maurice Jones-Drew, great player, tough guy. Missed the final 2 games of that season when his team was in a playoff chase.
Another running back.
Come on.
I'm going to have to listen.
Steph Curry missed time last year in the postseason with the same injury.
Wait a minute. I'm deferring, my man. I'm deferring. I understand what you're saying. I'm saying to you, am I wrong to tell you can't compare running backs to a quarterback?
Oh, I think you're undervaluing the importance of the base of a quarterback that has to set and turn. All of your power as a quarterback comes from your core. If you don't have a solid base, you got no chance.
But that's where I'm going. I'm saying to you, what's your alternative? Who is your backup?
I think it was Caleb Haney.
Yeah, Caleb Haney.
Who gives you the best chance to win?
Who gives you the best? Are you trying to tell me Caleb Haney gives you a better chance?
I think it's a dangerous assertion to say a guy who's been a competitor his entire career, tapped out and couldn't play because he wasn't tough enough.
Listen, you and I will debate till the cows come home. I never, ever said that Jay Cutler wasn't tough because I know offensive lines. He had played with suspect offensive lines for years, and he was getting beat up. He was on suicide watch. I never questioned the toughness overall. I do bring up that particular moment, though, because you and I will disagree forever.
My dad's 72 years old. He can ride a bicycle like that, but he can't stand in the pocket and backpedal.
Well, I understand. Hold on. But I guarantee you, if your daddy was 33 years of age and had the same injury and it was a Super Bowl berth on the line, I think if Tom Waddle had the same injury,
I think that's a dangerous comparison.
Tom,
listen, does Phillip Rivers stay out of that game?
I live dangerously.
That I don't know. I mean, I know Phillip Rivers played with a torn ACL in a playoff game that they were able to brace against the New England Patriots. I think
Can we stop living in the past for 1 second? I just want to hear if he should be a starter, if you think he should be an NFL starter moving forward.
I think he's going to start at least 8 games in the National Football League next year for a team that's going to give him a chance.
That's why you looked away and said that. That's why you looked away and said that. I can't believe you're saying this stuff.
Stop.
And you're going back to Chicago and you're going to go on the radio and say, do you say this stuff in Chicago?
I do, yes.
And what do they say to you? What do they say to you when you walk the streets of Chicago?
Stephen A., it's a very difficult job to try to defend Jay in any way, shape, or form. I admit that. And I'm telling you that he hasn't been the quarterback that everyone in Chicago expected him to be.
I know that. I know you get that. But I asked you a direct question. I'm talking about the incident that we were talking about in 2010 and what you're saying, it's hard to gauge all of this other stuff. I'm saying you go on the air and say that stuff?
Absolutely.
And what do they say to you, Tom? What do they say to you?
You know what they say? They say, Tom, you should know because you actually played.
Okay.
I didn't mean it directly at you.
No.
I'm saying, but the callers call me and say,
all I know is that bicycle did look kind of hard to me. That looked kind of.
You guys are ridiculous.
Let me be real. That's
backpedaling with pass rushers coming at you versus, please.
I don't even mind, even if you were calling me out.
But I wasn't. You know I wasn't calling you out.
I'm good with it because you did play and I did not. But what I asked you was the fans. You're trying to tell me that great sports town, that is the city of Chicago.
Sit up.
So in other words, they'll pick up the phone and call your show, and you're trying to tell me what they say to you is, oh, you played, we didn't.
No. What they say is they have the same perspective, and I tell them, I suggest to them that I think it's very dangerous for you to believe or come to the conclusion that Jay was capable of stepping back into that game and playing at that level.
Let me tell y'all something. Y'all keep having the attitude all you want. You might as well keep Jay Cutler. You'll keep losing.
I don't think that's going to be the case.
8 games next year.
He's damn right because he's gone.
If it doesn't work out with Jay, guess what? We got the NFL draft.
I'm speaking to you, Jared. Mr. Garrett, make it happen. Dak Prescott is leading our team right now. I need you to take Tony Romo, take a couple picks, and give them to Cleveland so you can pick me up. Please. I love to play in Dallas. Just make it happen.
Myles Garrett tried to speak it into existence. He doesn't seem to have hurt himself with the video that was taken in December and released last week, making that playful plea to the Cowboys to move up and draft him. Now, Garrett remains as the #1 pick in the draft to the Browns in Mel Kiper's mock draft 2.0. Other big names in the top 10. Mitch Trubisky is the first quarterback off the board, going second to the 49ers. Leonard Fournette going to the Jets with the 6th pick, and Deshaun Watson going to the Bills with the 10th pick. We welcome our draft expert, Mel Kiper Jr. to the show. Hello, Mel. Mel, you got me?
I got you now, Molly. You're back.
Good.
I lost you for a second.
Good. Well, thank you so much for being with us. We got a lot to get into with you. So Myles Garrett remains in the top spot. Do you think the video that was released last week will have any impact on the Browns taking him with that top pick?
No, I don't think it will. I think you look at Dallas, sure, they'd love to have Myles Garrett. They need a pass rusher who had all those sacks, 31 in his career. You look at a guy like Myles Garrett to Cleveland, though. If Cleveland makes a deal for Jimmy Garoppolo, they have the 12th pick as well in the first round, and they get Myles Garrett and also bring in Jimmy Garoppolo. That's a home run for Hugh Jackson. And the Cleveland Browns fans got to be excited because you got now the established quarterback, and you bring in the great pass rusher. What could be better than that if you're a Cleveland Browns fan?
Mel Kiper, Stephen A. here. Always great to talk to you, buddy. You need to explain to me how Jimmy Garoppolo is an established quarterback. He's been in the NFL for 3 years. He's thrown a grand total of 94 passes. He's played in 2 complete games. That's it. And now you're talking about he's an established quarterback. I didn't know your rules for established quarterback have changed so flagrantly, Mel Kiper. Could you explain that, please?
It's like the Hall of Very Good or the Hall of Fame, which is supposedly great players, right? All right, Steve?
That's right.
but he's played more than Mitch Trubisky, who's only been a one-year starter at North Carolina, because that's what you're comparing him to, guys. You're comparing him to what is available this year if you're Cleveland picking number one. Do we take Mitch Trubisky? Do we take Deshaun Watson? Or do we go for Jimmy Garoppolo? They drafted Cody Kessler last year, brought in RG3. Nothing's worked for Cleveland. Really, go back to Otto Graham worked, and Bernie Kosar worked, Brian Sipe, but since then, what have you had? Okay, so I think you look at Jimmy Garoppolo, established from the standpoint of New England's had him. He's played preseason, regular season. He's also been behind Tom Brady and been with Tom Brady everywhere. And that's got to rub off a little bit. That great competitiveness for the best quarterback of all time, Tom Brady, can't hurt Jimmy Garoppolo. If you like them coming out of Eastern Illinois, remember, he was a second-round pick, not a free agent, okay? So you had your scouting report on Garoppolo going back to when he came out of the 1AA ranks. If you liked him then, you got to like him now. And the key is, do you like him better than developmental quarterbacks like Trubisky and Watson? When you know, if you're Hugh Jackson, the days of being 2-14 have to end at some point. You got to start winning games. You got to close the gap between your quarterback and Dalton, Flacco, and Roethlisberger. Those are the teams you have to beat. Those are the quarterbacks you have to beat. And right now, you're in the cellar. You're a distant fourth.
So given the resources it takes to get any one of those quarterbacks, including not only the draft pick, but the money, the cap hit, and all that, is Jimmy Garoppolo the number one potentially available guy? Talk about Kirk Cousins, potentially Jay Cutler, Kaepernick, obviously, and you mentioned Trubisky, and, of course, Deshaun Watson. Is Jimmy Garoppolo the number one available quarterback, all things considered?
Max, I think for Cleveland, it would get down to, do you want to bring in a Mike Glennon from Tampa Bay? I know John Gruden has a tremendously high opinion of Mike Glennon, liked him coming out of NC State. Remember, Russell Wilson moved on from NC State to Wisconsin because they knew they had Mike Glennon there to step in. I think you look at various options, but Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, for Cleveland is the best. They've already made the deal for Jamie Collins. There's that relationship between New England and Cleveland. Keep in mind, Bill Belichick, where was he fired as a head coach? Cleveland. So I think you look at where they are now, these two organizations, I think that would be a move that would benefit both. You have Jacoby Brissett, who's played some. They drafted him. They have him. Tom Brady's not retiring anytime soon. They say maybe 3-4 more years for Tom Brady. Who knows? Maybe 5. He's going to be 40 in August. But I think with the Cleveland Browns, what they need to do this year is start winning games. If you draft Trubisky or Watson, they need to be developed some. Where Garoppolo is, maybe he's not established to the level of Stephen A. and what he wants, but I think from an NFL perspective and a draft perspective, he's ahead of the game coming in this year.
Mel Kiper, I'm looking at your list here, sir, and I love and revere you, sir, but I have problems with some people on this list here, Mel Kiper Jr. Like, you will agree with me, right, that there's no position on the football field more important than the quarterback position. Is that correct?
Correct.
How is it that you got Chicago? They're going to, on your list, Jonathan Allen, the defensive lineman out of Alabama, who's a stud, but he's a defensive lineman. You've got Jacksonville that's got some problems with Bortles. They're talking about taking Jamal Adams, the safety out of LSU. You've got the New York Jets. God knows they need a quarterback in New York City. You got them taking Leonard Fournette. I'm at a loss as to why you've got at least 3 or 4 teams in your top 10 that are actually going to pass on a Deshaun Watson, actually going to pass on a quarterback for these other guys. Could you explain that?
You're going to be at more of a loss after I tell you why I went with what I did, Stephen A. The main thing is, if you think about the teams you mentioned, they need to win. Chicago can't go through another year or 2 losing football games. They got all this young talent on defense, and they have to start winning. That's the opportunity for a Tony Romo. The Jets, how much longer can they keep losing? They can't. They better turn around. There's going to be major changes in that organization. You draft a young quarterback, you're drafting for the next coach and the next GM, okay? So that's where Romo, Glennon, Garoppolo are better options than a young quarterback. Hey, Dak Prescott, you caught lightning in a bottle, okay? That doesn't happen very often. Look at Jared Goff. He's still being developed. Wentz started strong and then tailed off some, but I think they have a bright future there with Wentz. But if you draft Trubisky and Watson, you are not going to draft them for you. You're drafting for the next guy. And I don't think head coaches and GMs, knowing that they have to win this year, are going to go that route. San Francisco, the 49ers have Kyle Shanahan. He has the benefit, as John Lynch, the GM, does, of time. They can draft Trubisky or Watson and let them develop and don't have to worry about, hey, next year I better start winning. I better make a lot of progress. Those other teams that you mentioned, they better start winning and they better start making progress.
Mel, I want to get into Stephen A's favorite team, the Cowboys. So Jerry Jones has come out and said he wants a war daddy on defense. To get that kind of guy, are they going to have to trade up for that?
Well, I think, you never know. A lot of good pass rushers, Molly, have gone from the second round on. Robert Mathis was a great player. He didn't go until like the fifth round. You think about all the great players that have gone. Elvis Dumervil was a fourth-round pick. Richard Dent went in the ninth round, okay? So there's been a lot of pass rush. Jared Allen was a fourth-round pick. I think if you look at where they are right now is Derek Barnett from Tennessee, who had an incredible career in the SEC. Does he test though well? Is he a great collegian who may be just a good pro? He's got to show he can be a great pro like he was in college by testing well. If Derek Barnett does, he's not going to be anywhere near Dallas. If he slides down that far, it makes sense. If they want to trade up, the hot guy right now in terms of a buzz for the NFL draft as a pass rusher is Taco Charlton from Michigan. He had a dominant game against Ohio State. He had a great year overall. He's got length. He's got edge pass rushing ability, and he is going to interest teams like Carolina. You think about the Cincinnati Bengals, teams in the top part of the first round, top 10 of the first round. Carolina Panthers will be looking at Taco Charlton. So you better move up into the top 10 if you're Dallas if you want Charlton, Taco Charlton from Michigan.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back into First Take. Appreciate you hanging with us. Our first hour is in the books, but we've got another 60 minutes coming your way. Stephen A., what are you hot on as we head into hour number 2?
You know something, I've been waiting to talk about this situation with Floyd, and of course, I've got T.O. on my mind because, once again, Terrell Owens has been validated as a Hall of Famer, contrary to what some of his contemporaries may think. That coming up now. Floyd Money Mayweather, Max, was at the OKC Warriors game Saturday night, and we spoke for a few minutes. It's not finalized. There are details to be worked out. He did not confirm that a deal had been done as of yet. But as you know, I've known Floyd for years, and he had a smile on his face, and he says, we're getting there. We're getting very, very close. And he believes that he has the potential to make even more money than he made fighting Pacquiao.
Please let this fight happen. Then Mayweather took to the gram, posting this on IG yesterday. There seems to be several rumors floating around media recently. However, let the record show there haven't been any deals made in regards to a fight between myself and any other fighters. I'm happily retired and enjoying life at this time. If any changes are to come, be sure that I will be the first to let the world know. Now, you know McGregor wasn't going to sit idly by, hitting Mayweather with this picture and the caption, I am in Las Vegas. Floyd has retired on my arrival. If only the trash talk was any indication of what this bout would look like. Stephen A., what is going on here with Mayweather?
First of all, people were treating it like I reported that a deal was done. Floyd Mayweather specifically said nothing was done, which is what I said. He's confident because he's reached a point where he has said, I'm doing this. I'm ready to fight. The difference is I'm my own boss. You are not. I'm the A team. You are not. Conor is going to talk back and forth. Floyd is going to talk back and forth. But in the end, what this comes down to is whether or not Conor McGregor and those boys with the UFC, including Dana White, are going to sanction this getting done. The Nevada State Athletic Commission knows about this. They don't seem to have a problem with it. Floyd certainly doesn't have a problem with it. And from the people that I've spoken to, regardless of what Dana White says, of course a deal is not done or anything like that. But the opportunity, if it presents itself and it works for all parties, they're certainly not going to stand in the way of Conor McGregor making this fight happen. But it really is about them. It's not about Floyd, because Floyd is standing still. And his whole thing is, I'm ready when you are. What you gonna do? You chirping. You talking. But I'm my own boss. I don't have to answer to anybody. You do. I'm ready to do this. So speculation as to whether or not Floyd wants to do this needs to come to an end. He was on this show. He said it. Mm-hmm. He said it to other folks. He said it to me Saturday. He's willing to do it, but under no circumstances did he give any indications that it's done, because Conor seems to be acting like he's the A-lister. He's the one that gets in a position to make demands. And all I would say to that is, evidently, you're not accustomed to doing business with Floyd Money Mayweather. There are many people who have tried to sit up there and usurp his authority since he's been in complete control of his own brand. They have all failed.
Yeah, except for De La Hoya, who had done what Floyd did Before Floyd.
Right, before. I'm saying before.
De La Hoya
right.
showed if you're a famous boxer, if you're a big box office guy as a boxer, you can leverage your fame and your ability at the box office to make yourself your own promoter, essentially, and then be the lead promoter in any show. That's what Floyd's done. Conor McGregor is in the UFC. That's his promoter. And the UFC in mixed martial arts has a dominant position. And one of the reasons that is, and one of the reasons there are a lot of famous UFC fighters and not as many famous boxers at the moment, is that UFC is able to control labor costs. It's one of the reasons the fight might happen, because Mayweather is using the notoriety, the fame of Conor McGregor to make a big event. And at the same time, he knows he doesn't have to pay that opponent, maybe even with the promoter on top of the UFC, as much as he may have to pay someone like Pacquiao. Because in boxing, those labor costs aren't controlled. Both sides got to get paid. But if you're Conor McGregor and you're making, I'll just pick a number, $5 million a fight, and you can make $25 million for this fight, that's 5 fights in the UFC, and in the UFC, you might lose any one of those fights. Here, McGregor can lose to Mayweather. Doesn't matter. He's not a boxer anyway. It doesn't really hurt him, and he can make the same he can make in 5 fights. Meanwhile, Floyd can say, $25 million for this guy. That's not so much.
So let me ask
I don't have
this.
to give him $100 million. I can keep the rest.
Let me ask you this, because this is the fight game, and I'm always going to defer to you first, Max.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. Is this one of those situations where somebody like you, even more so than me, but the combination of the both of us and folks from a global, folks that have global reach, do we need to stand up and say to McGregor, yo, bro, I don't know if you know this or not, but you are not the A-lister here. You got an opportunity to make more money. I mean, the way he sounds, he acts like he makes more money than Floyd. Floyd's made more money in one fight than he's...
McGregor's not the problem. I'm sure Floyd loves this, because the reason McGregor, and you brought this up yesterday, it's a big event because McGregor can sell pay-per-views because he can talk that talk, right?
Yes, he can.
That's why Floyd says, go talk to your people, go talk to the UFC. Really what happened is you broke it yesterday. There was chatter about it, and sometimes chatter in the media makes a deal more difficult to get done. So obviously phone calls are being exchanged. Hey, good job promoting the fight, but shh, let's put the horse back in the barn until we get the paperwork signed, and then we can start promoting this thing again. I think that's what's going on.
So the holdup's the UFC.
Yes, and Conor saying he being that A-list kind of ego is what makes it a big event.
It's good to know both fighters are in, though.
Well, listen, again, we can say that, but McGregor sounds like he's in, but he also sounds like he's giving folks a hard time in terms of making the deal.
He wants to get paid. You can't blame him.
Well, wait a minute. Like Max just said, you're going to make more in one fight than it would take you to make in 5 fights.
He's in a boxing ring, Stephen A. Like, think about what he's putting on the line. And I get that he has nothing to lose from that perspective. But I'm just saying, it's a totally different sport, essentially.
Max just explained to you that he has very little to lose. Conor McGregor has very little to lose.
I get that he has little to lose from a reputation standpoint. And I get that if Floyd did with his 49-0 record. But I'm saying, remember, Conor's the one that's going into his sport.
Yeah, but what I'm saying...
That deserves some extra money, in my opinion.
But wait a minute. Floyd Mayweather came on this show and explained to us, wait a minute, I'm trying to give you 5-10 times more than you've ever made. You're thinking you deserve almost as much as me.
Because he feels like he's boxing.
But I'm saying you don't deserve more than Floyd.
And my interpretation, guys, my reading of this situation is that this is not Conor McGregor holding him up for more money. This is the fact that Conor McGregor's not the only one who needs to get paid here. The promoter, the UFC, also needs to get paid. That's another layer of expense.
But
it seems to me that's what's being negotiated right now.
But a quick question here. If the fight happens by mere virtue of the fight happening, doesn't that alone make mega money for the UFC because of the attention that it brings to the sport?
And that's why the fight is likely to be made. Everyone gets paid.
On that note, we will leave it there, and we'll switch gears to our nation's capital. So the franchise tag window opens today, and the Redskins have until March 1st to decide whether to use that on Kirk Cousins. So after playing the 2016 season under the tag, Washington would prefer to work out a long-term extension with its starting quarterback this offseason. Cousins would receive close to $24 million if Washington opts to use it. A third straight franchise tag would mean paying him $34.5 million in 2018. They could still work out a long-term deal after franchising Cousins. Max, what would you do? Would you franchise him or give him the long-term deal?
I'd probably give him the long-term deal at this point because there aren't a lot of quarterbacks out there right now, and Washington is a talented team. It's not like they're without talent, and Cousins is a solid quarterback. Now, I don't know that I would pay him like a franchise quarterback, but this is what seems to be emerging in the NFL right now. franchise quarterback means you ain't looking. You're done. You're good at quarterback. A starting quarterback means we're okay. If something amazing comes along, maybe we'll look at that. But for now, we're okay. And when you think about it, if he avoids injury and you keep franchising him, you're likely to wind up paying him more than you will in a long-term deal anyway. The guarantee for Osweiler was only $37.5 million. Cousins made more than half of that last year. He does it again. He already beat Osweiler's guarantee in 2 years.
Here's my thing. I have no problem with a long-term commitment to Kirk Cousins. I have a problem with the money. When we start talking 100, 125 million, and by the way, that's a point I forgot to bring up with Mr. Waddle here in terms of Jay Cutler, $126 million. I don't give a damn that it wasn't all guaranteed. Only 50 plus was guaranteed. The notion that $126, let alone $126 million gets associated with Jay Cutler really irks my nerves. Having said all of that, let's be clear. Kirk Cousins. This is a guy that passed what? Completed 67% of his passes, passed for 4,917 yards, his second consecutive 4,000-yard season as a starter in Washington, having not missed a single game over the last 2 years, 32 games. He's played all 32 of them. Kirk Cousins has proven to me that he deserves the team saying, okay, if Brock Osweiler is out there getting $70 million with $37 million guaranteed, et cetera, you deserve something. My problem is when you say $100 million, you're calling him the franchise.
Right.
And I don't believe he's earned the right to be a franchise quarterback. Last year, I'm going to repeat this again, and you tell me to put on my reporter hat, that's what I'm doing. Last year, in the throes of Washington's struggle, I got calls from numerous dudes in that locker room that said, we like Kirk. Great guy, damn good quarterback. Don't pay so much attention to the numbers, because he will pad his stats. And is he really playing to win, or is he really playing to pad those numbers? There have been times when I've watched the Washington Redskins and Kirk Cousins has come up small in big moments. Not always, but it has happened. And there have been other times when they were out of reach, they were losing, and somehow, some way, prevent defenses kick in and you padding up your numbers that way. Those are the kind of things that I'm looking at with Kirk Cousins. I'm looking for the Kirk Cousins that shows up consistently in big moments and tells me and shows me that the word franchise deserves to be attached to his name other than a franchise
That's
tag.
the difference to me also between him and a franchise quarterback. Let me see you get it done with the money on the line. I haven't really listen, other people could argue, well, the money's always on the line, and if you're a starting quarterback, you know what I mean. Highest leverage moments, I haven't seen it from him. And if you need 8 yards for a first down and you throw for 6 and you're punting, it doesn't help you much.
That's a good point, because that's exactly what Kirk does sometimes.
And Elway tried to address this in the Osweiler situation. There should be a middle class for quarterbacks. You're not a scrub, but you're not Tom Brady either. You're somewhere in between. And Osweiler
got solid quarterback.
Osweiler's not that.
No, Kirk.
But I'm saying Osweiler's not that, but he got paid like that. Cousins is that. Cousins better than a guy like Osweiler, but he's obviously not Tom Brady.
You know what else, too? I'd give Kirk Cousins the house if it were Denver. Why? Because I have Emmanuel Sanders, right. I have Demaryius Thomas, and I have a defense that's elite, and I have John Elway. And so under those circumstances, okay, that's all I need. I'm good. But when you call Kirk Cousins a franchise, you're talking about building something around him. And I don't know if he's earned that yet, as much as I like him. And I do appreciate the fact that he seems committed to Washington and wants to stay. I do have my questions about him being a $100 million man.
Meanwhile, O.J. Simpson has been in a Nevada prison since 2008 after being sentenced to 33 years for an incident at a Las Vegas hotel where Simpson attempted to forcefully reclaim memorabilia. But this summer, he may get out early. According to analysis from a University of New Hampshire legal expert, Simpson might be granted early release on parole. Simpson, of course, is universally known for being acquitted of another crime, the murders of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ronald Goldman in the trial of the century in 1995. And look who's here, Will Kane. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I feel like it's been a while.
Because it has. It has been.
It's good to have you back.
Yeah.
And happy to have you weighing in on this. I am going to start with you, Max. Do you think that O.J. should get parole?
Yes, I do. Because in this case, he has to be considered, his parole has to be considered exclusively on the circumstances on which he was convicted. This has nothing to do, or shouldn't have had anything to do, with any relationship O.J. has to the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Goldman. Like that, the two things cannot be connected. Now, if you've seen O.J. Simpson O.J. Made in America, which was amazing, and I highly suggest you watch, especially this installment, especially that episode, where it went over in great detail the circumstances surrounding this particular conviction and left me as a viewer with the impression that O.J. was kind of set up and railroaded and given much more time. And in this case, every excuse was made to give him as much time as possible for the crime for which he was committed. Now, I know what people are thinking. He did it, and don't let him out. He's a menace to society. Okay, but we live in a nation where there's a rule of law, and he was not convicted for their murders. This is something else, and it must be judged exclusively on the evidence and the circumstances of this case. Should he be paroled? If his behavior is living up to it, etc., if he meets the criteria for someone who should be paroled, the answer is yes.
Hell no. I not only think he should be in jail, I think he should stay in jail. As far as I'm concerned, it wouldn't bother me if he rotted in there for the rest of his damn life. And yes, I am fully aware of the fact that he has been railroaded. No question about it. I mean, because stealing, trying to reclaim his own memorabilia, accusing him of terroristic threats or whatever it was. I think it was 12 counts and what have you. And ultimately, they reached the conclusion that he was sentenced to 33 years, eligible for parole after 9 years. Here's the reason why I think he should spend the rest of his life in prison. Because he's an idiot, that's why. Idiocy to this level, when I firmly believe that you are a double murderer. I firmly believe that you killed Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. I firmly believe that you laughed in the face of the system, you mocked it, and instead of having the decency to walk away because the trial was turned into something else due to the greatness of Johnny Cochran and the ineptitude of Marsha Clark and Christopher Darden. The bottom line is you had an opportunity, an ideal opportunity to chill out, walk away, and go on with your life. And instead, what did you do? You laughed and mocked Ronald Goldman's family when they sued you civilly and won about $33.5 million, but your money was protected and they couldn't reclaim all of this stuff. And I want to make sure I emphasize this. Under no circumstances am I saying, and I know a whole bunch of people is going to disagree with me, and I get it, I understand it. Under no circumstances am I saying that I believe that O.J. did not get railroaded with this whole memorabilia stuff. I get all. I totally understand it. But when you are an individual that was on trial for double murder, that I believe got off, by the way, and you still don't have the decency and the common sense not to stare the system in the face and give it the proverbial middle finger, you deserve what you get. And as far as I'm concerned, that's exactly what it is. And I hear in the prison that they watch, in the prison that he's in outside of Reno, Nevada, that they actually watch ESPN. I hope he's watching me right now. That man brought all of this on himself. He didn't know any better. He was an idiot for finding himself in another predicament, and he put it on himself, and he deserves what he's getting.
Idiocy. Idiocy gets you 33 years, huh?
Well, evidently he got sentenced. Did he not get sentenced to 33 years?
Well, in your argument, he deserves the 33 years for idiocy alone.
Yeah, pretty much. And double
murder. I would
murder.
suggest you should be grateful that's not the standard of the system in this country. You might be doing a life sentence for some of the things you've said on this program.
Please.
Idiocy, 33 years.
Anytime, any day you want to compare the idiotic stuff that comes out of folks' mouth, you name the time and place.
They're both getting triple life. Now, go ahead.
You've got to be crazy. There you go. That's a good one.
O.J. should get out because I believe in justice. I don't believe in karma, and I don't believe in sentencing people for things that they got off of, although they should have been convicted of. We all seem to agree, as any rational person does, that O.J. killed Nicole Simpson and Ron Brown. Clearly, he is, outside of the United States justice system, in all of our minds, in any rational thinker's mind, a murderer. And by the way, beyond that, he's a sociopath. It's an absolute travesty of justice that he got off in that trial in the 1990s. And in fact, if somebody should go to jail, it's the jurors in that case who relied on the concept of karma over justice to let him off. They were getting the LAPD back for its history of bigotry. They were enacting karma to get back at racism to let a murderer off.
I'll respond to that, by the way.
What I'm suggesting
I will respond to that.
But here's the thing, Stephen A. Two wrongs don't make a right. Don't use the same rationale that those jurors used to commit an injustice to do another. Karma is not the way you should live your life. Justice is the way you lead your life. And in this case, as Max said, and as you admitted as well, he was absolutely railroaded. Everybody else involved in this robbery served minimal time. No one gets 33 years for a robbery. He's already served 9 years. He has checked every box on the parole board, the parole commission's standards for someone, whether or not they should get out. You simply cannot look back and say, you know what? He really did this other horrendous thing that he wasn't convicted of, and we all know it, and we can hold that against him. And here's the reason you can't do that. Trust me, I don't lose any sleep that OJ's sitting in jail. I don't feel sorry for OJ whatsoever. But here's why you can't adopt your idiocy standard. Here's why you can't adopt the karma standard. Because then it could apply to anyone at any time with no rules whatsoever. It could be held to you or me or Max, anyone.
May I get to
Max,
respond?
I'm sorry, but it wouldn't apply to you.
May I get to respond?
Of course you're going to get to respond.
Because you've conceded you believe him to be a double murderer.
Yes.
And a sociopath.
Yes.
A double murderer and a sociopath should not have any other form of justice, in my estimation. I respect the fact that you believe differently, but don't call it idiotic or anything of the like, because there are people who feel differently than you when it comes to that regard. You are absolutely valid when you point to the fact that, under our justice system, blah, blah, blah. But under our justice system, look what happened. And oh, by the way, while you call out folks on the jury who let him off, in defense of in defense of that jury, my response to you would be something simple. Perhaps if you were a brother or sister that struggled the way that they struggled because of the LAPD at that particular time and times before that, wait a minute. You are not. You haven't suffered the way that they've suffered.
No.
You have not.
No.
Have you?
No, but that does not give you license to put murderers on the street.
Wait a minute.
Both
I agree with
things
that. Hold
can
it,
be
hold it,
true.
hold it, wait a minute.
You can have suffered at the hands of the LAPD and still put a double murder away.
But you're assuming they believed OJ did it and let him off. And I'm saying to you, there's a legitimate argument that those people didn't believe that about OJ because of the transgression of the police.
What you're arguing about.
No, I'm sorry, Max. You touted OJ Made in America, the ESPN documentary that's now up for the Academy Award. In that documentary, there are specific interviews with jurors.
Not all of them.
Not all of them, but some. And it only takes one to get a guy off who are saying they didn't care about his innocence or guilt. They didn't care about the
argument. Hold on. The argument you're having is about due process, and I am on your side about this, versus a larger ideal of justice, meaning that the right thing happens whether or not due process was applied. I agree with Will. We live in a nation of laws, and due process in this case trumps even the idea of some kind of larger version of morality. But let me say, if he is a sociopath, and that can be demonstrated, then no, he shouldn't get parole. And furthermore, whether or not he was railroaded in this case shouldn't even affect whether he gets parole. Because even if he wasn't railroaded, if he's up for parole and he deserves parole, he should still get it.
I stated my belief that he's a sociopath. I'm neither a psychiatrist nor someone who's testifying before this parole hearing. But that's the difference between us. I'm not standing by OJ. I'm standing by principles. I'm standing by the rule of law as Max laid out. In my gut, do I want OJ in jail? Yes, but I'm not the little mini king or dictator of this country, nor do I want to be, nor do I want you to be, nor do I want your gut to guide us through every single thorny issue we have. I want rules, because whether or not I trust Stephen A., and by the way, maybe I would, I may not trust the next guy or the guy after that. That's why I put faith in rules. They're not infallible, Stephen A.
Right.
They get it wrong.
Right.
But I'm going to stand by those over your gut or anybody else's gut.
But my response to that is this. That justice that you're alluding to, I would find to be a more favorable point of view if it was discretionary, if it was something that was fair enough and applicable to all folks. That hasn't been the case when it comes to the African-American community. I am a black man. I'm here telling you that black individual known as O.J. Simpson deserved to be in jail because of his stupidity, deserved to be in jail because he wasn't stupid enough to lay low and be quiet after he killed 2 damn people. I don't give a damn what happens to him. That's me. But that same level of justice that you're saying that I'm absent enough, to me, I look at it entirely differently, because I'm saying to you, there are white individuals who have committed egregious transgression, and justice wasn't accorded to them. And I'd say the same thing about them if they were in O.J.'s situation. So if I'm going to say it about them, why not say it about O.J. Simpson? I am being even-handed. I am engaging in justice. It's just that my definition of justice is a little bit different than yours.
Yeah, because your definition of justice is solely withheld within the mind of Stephen A. Smith. And
that's not true.
Until you're
king. That's not true.
Until you're dictator,
it's in the minds of history. Because historically, we've seen it exercised unfairly.
Stephen A., I am not denying what you're talking about. I don't deny that the rules of justice have been unfairly applied throughout our history. But the answer to that is not to throw away the rules. The answer to that is not to do away with our principles.
They are the rules. He got sentenced to 33 years.
Is not to embrace your gut.
Is everybody that's eligible for parole, do they all get granted parole? No. He got sentenced to 33 years. Parole is after 9 years. Okay? When parole comes up, they don't have to let him out. It's within the rules for them to keep his behind in jail. What rule am I breaking?
The answer, Stephen
What rule am I breaking?
The answer to the unfair application of our rules throughout the past history of the United States is not to discard them. It's to hold truer to them. And in this case, sometimes it leads you to outcomes you don't like. But that's what you have to do here. Hold true to these rules.
The more primitive point of view in this case is the pre-industrial code of ethics, system of honor, that Stephen A., I think you are applying here. We are a post-industrial rule of law society, and that is a good thing. That is something we want to preserve. O.J. should get parole if he deserves it.
He should get it. He doesn't deserve it. That's
there you go.
And now, insurance-minded speeches from Geico.
It's a common expression, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. However, what if the horse's mouth is filled with useful insurance tools? This is the exact case with the Geico app. Yes, the app is free and therefore a gift horse. However, look inside the app and behold, emergency roadside assistance, digital ID cards, bill pay. Get the Geico app. Look it in the mouth. Get amazing services. Thank you.
There are things that go unseen by the public. There are things that happen on the field that even when they happen, the fans and the laymen do not recognize what happens. And in his case, he was somewhat unreliable in some of the things he would do, because he would, sometimes we'd have a route that was called at 12 and he'd run it at 9. That disrupts your quarterback and things like that. But that being said, he still was highly productive, and I do think he warrants very, very strong consideration.
How about the Tuna admitting he had issues with Terrell Owens while coaching the Cowboys, but believes that despite his issues with T.O., Owens should make the Hall? We talked about that term railroaded earlier, Max.
Yeah.
Does this prove T.O. was railroaded?
Yes. Dan Fouts testified to that fact. Basically said, yeah, we railroaded him. He's a Hall of Fame player who's not getting into the Hall of Fame. There are tough calls in the Hall of Fame. I wouldn't have put TD in. I'm happy he got in. I'm happy for him. His prime was certainly Hall of Fame caliber, tragically cut short by injury. I think there are borderline cases like that where I would fall on the other side. But this wasn't a hard one. This is an easy one. T.O. was a distraction. I need more specifics. Can I have more details? How was he a distraction? And by the way, considering his level of play, where he always gave you a better chance to win than anyone else in the era at his position, except maybe Randy Moss, I really need to know those details. Best player in the Super Bowl on either team on one leg. He was called selfish going into that game for wanting to help his team on one leg. Babe Ruth was a distraction. Joe Namath was a distraction. LT was a distraction. They're all in the Hall of Fame. You know why? In their various Hall of Fames. Because they were Hall of Fame players. That's why. They're Hall of Fame players. They go into the Hall of Fame. For T.O.'s distractions, the ones that he supposedly created, and I'm willing to accept the idea that he was less than ideal in the locker room for coaches at times and teammates. Do you know how severe they would have to be to keep that level of production and talent for that long a time out of the Hall of Fame? I'm sorry. It's not like he was out committing crimes and destroying teams from within. Eagles got to the Super Bowl where he balled out, as I mentioned. He's obviously a Hall of Famer getting railroaded. Parcells is admitting it, and so did Fouts, by the way.
Not railroaded. By no definition of the word railroad has T.O. been railroaded out of the Hall of Fame. But let's just focus on that. There seems to be some memo that goes around that I don't get, that T.O.'s in the Hall of Fame and everybody has to stand with Charles Oakley and a few others. I don't understand how these things are so obvious to everyone. Let me say, I agree. If I'm sitting on that panel, I vote sooner or later that T.O. goes into the Hall of Fame. because it's a balancing act. But for you to say Railroad pretends, except for your one little caveat about him being a divisive teammate towards the end of your soliloquy, that to pretend that doesn't exist, that offsets his numbers. It doesn't offset to the point that he should be out of the Hall of Fame, but it certainly means it's a hard call. Max, it certainly means it's a hard call. And it's reflected in Bill Parcells' words.
He would have to have bodies buried for it to be a hard call.
This is a Hall of Fame coach. This is a Hall of Fame coach giving you how hard a call it is. He is telling you this guy was not good in the locker room, not just on the locker room, but on the sideline, not just on the sideline, but on the field. When a 12-yard out was called and he ran it for 9 yards, Parcells called him unreliable. Take Parcells, take Dan Fouts, take Donovan McNabb, take Tony Romo, take Jason Witten, take Jeff Garcia. All of these men played with him except for Fouts. All of these people played with him.
And what's Parcells' opinion, Will?
That he should go in. Max, I'm not saying you're wrong on that point. I am saying you're wrong on the obviousness of it. And that seems to be where everyone is. This is so obvious. This is such a travesty of justice. It's not. T.O. will get in. It'll probably be in a year or two.
How many wideouts in his era? How many players who played the position in his era gave you a better chance to win than T.O.? Maybe Randy Moss. Can you name another?
That's a great opinion. It might be one that I agree with, but I'm going to defer to these people that played with
that also he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yes, but they say that he has serious negatives that make this a difficult decision.
Will Kane, you sound like a flaming hypocrite.
Okay.
Just a segment earlier, you talked about justice.
This is going to be interesting.
You talked about justice. You talked about, you constantly come on the show on a weekly basis and you talk about fairness. And you talk about justice. I am saying to you, there is no denying the level of production that T.O. has put forth. You are looking on the outside and you're saying you had these players and you read up and you realize that these coaches, these players have spoken up against T.O. Well, Donovan McNabb played with T.O., called T.O. a headache and a distraction at times, et cetera, et cetera. He concedes T.O.'s a Hall of Famer. Bill Parcells, a Hall of Fame coach, recognized that, he was problematic at times, still said he's a Hall of Famer. I covered T.O. in Philadelphia. The Brian Dawkins of the world and Jeremiah Trotters of the world and so many Hugh Douglases of the world who got into a fist fight with T.O. for crying out loud and others. These are people who were in the locker room and had to concede. He wasn't as bad of a teammate as people tried to project him to be, not to mention the fact that they concede he's a Hall of Famer. And knowing that, looking at the numbers that go along with it, that's where we reach the point that it's obvious, because everything else is speculative.
No.
Yes, it is.
Would you call Bill Parcells' statement speculative?
No. What I'm saying to you is that Bill Parcells and Donovan McNabb's opinion and the fact that they're willing to reach the conclusion that he's a Hall of Famer. You have others who didn't play with T.O. who would say that he's not, because of the very things that they acknowledge while conceding he's a Hall of Famer, and they're the ones who played with him.
The ones who are in best position to make that call are conceding it.
What would you call? I'm just asking you this. What would you call Bill Parcells' statement? Was that a ringing endorsement?
Yes.
Oh, get out of here.
Let me explain why. Because despite the adversity, he's conceding something he would not be inclined to concede.
But he's not saying it's a no-brainer, and that's what you're arguing, that this is not a no-brainer decision.
No. A concession is not a ringing endorsement.
Let me tell you why.
It is a reluctant conclusion you've reached.
Let me tell you why I feel that way. Because if under duress you still reach a conclusion that are obvious to people who might have a loftier view of you, to me that's very, very significant. The fact that in the throes of that duress, that controversy, that you're willing to reach a conclusion, as much as it may grate you to do so, you can't even fight the obvious. That makes it even more obvious. That's all I mean. I don't mean rigging endorsement. Let's celebrate it, blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying
there is logic there where the point is the people in the best position to know reluctantly concede he's a Hall of Famer. And then people in less of a good position to know say, since they're reluctant, I'm saying no. That doesn't hold up logically.
Absolutely.
And the numbers put him there.
Absolutely does. Here's the point of view. In the end, I'm not unlike Donovan McNabb. I'm not unlike Bill Parcells. It slides ever so tenuously in T.O.'s direction.
It's not tenuous.
But I'm not ignoring the evidence on the other side. When you two act like it's so obvious, and you're not alone, that people like Vic Carucci at the Buffalo News or Jason Cole from Bleacher Report are just absolutely absurd for voting against T.O., I'm telling you, I can see their evidence. And I'm telling you, I can hear Bill Parcells' words and Jason Witten and Tony Romo and Jeff Garcia and Donovan McNabb. And I can tell you this, T.O. will get in, but along the way, it'll be a difficult decision.
Listen, those names that you brought up, I respect both of those contemporaries in this business. I don't mean to cast any aspersions on them. But what I'm saying to you is where their stuff doesn't hold water. A guy like a Lawrence Taylor, obviously, a first ballot Hall of Famer, this is a guy that was hiring prostitutes to go to opponents' rooms. This is a guy that was on drugs. This is a guy that came when he wanted to come to practice and stuff like that. This is a guy that was a distraction in a myriad of ways. I'm saying that as a voter, if you're Bill Parcells or you're Donovan McNabb, it resonates with me because he personally impacted you. As an outsider looking in and going by what we hear, you pick and choose who you going to let in and who you going to keep out. I think that's egregious. When the numbers are there to support that he should be a Hall of Famer.
I think guys like Bill Parcells and Don McNabb have got it exactly right.
DeMarcus Cousins had yet another huge game last night, putting up 40 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists, and a win against the Lakers. The question has never been about Boogie's talent, but about his attitude and demeanor on the court. DeMarcus already has 17 technical fouls this season and recently said, "It's obvious I can't be myself. Me playing how I play is what makes me a player that I am." Stephen A., can you win a title with this guy?
I believe you can. I believe that DeMarcus Cousins is the best big man in basketball. Is he temperamental? Yes. Does he talk a little bit too much at times? Yes. The technical fouls, for example, the penchant to get a little violent from time to time. I don't like the look of you being 6'11", 260-plus pounds, and you threatening a reporter twice your age, if not more so, who's half your size. I mean, I just don't think that's smart. Those kind of temperamental things can definitely hurt him, but in the end, make no mistake about it, this brother is big time. DeMarcus Cousins is the best big man in basketball. He can shoot threes. He can put the ball on the floor. He can play with it back to the basket. He rebounds. He scores. He's averaging 28 a game. He's incredibly powerful. And not only that, he responds to pressure situations. It does not faze him. My dream, Max, I would love to see the Washington Wizards and John Wall get DeMarcus Cousins. I would love to. I'm telling you right now, if Ernie Grunfeld find a way to get his hands on DeMarcus Cousins while keeping Wall, Beal, and Porter, I'm telling you right now, it would be Cleveland and the Washington Wizards. I'm talking about for the next several years battling for Eastern Conference supremacy.
Played with Isaiah Thomas, they didn't win a whole lot. And Isaiah Thomas was much better than people even realized back then.
You know, it's different. Right?
Yeah, but I mean, look, here's the question. Can you win with DeMarcus Cousins? Can you win a championship with DeMarcus Cousins? You can't. I can't. The Knicks couldn't. The Lakers couldn't anytime soon. A lot of good teams couldn't. Greg Popovich could. A situation like that. In other words, the question with a player who's not even a max contract player, by the way. That's coming up for DeMarcus Cousins, but it's not there yet. He's also kind of inexpensive for what he does.
That temperament is what has affected him.
No question about it. But the question with a player like Cousins, who has an issue with his temperament, but is incredibly talented, is can you win a championship with him? Can he be the best player on a championship team? The answer is yes, but only in very specific circumstances. He has to be in just the right system in terms of the culture of the team, with just the right coach and veteran teammates who get him to buy in and control himself. If that's the case, he can not only win a championship, but he can do it as the best player on the team because he is amazingly skilled and talented. There's a difference. Skill is the honing of that talent. He's naturally talented and incredibly skilled and huge and can also play in a way that's not only conducive to winning in this league, but would have been conducive to winning in any league throughout NBA history, in any era. He's an amazing talent, but he could only win one with Popovich and the Spurs, or a situation that's similar to that, not just anywhere.
I think that one of the things you continuously bring up when we have these kind of conversations is whether or not you can be the best player. That's not what I was answering. I'm saying that this guy, when the question is asked, can you win a championship with somebody? The way I'm interpreting it is having this guy going to make you lose because they're distracting, because they're not a team player, because their skill set is not what it needs to be. It doesn't mesh with whatever. I'm saying I don't care what team you put DeMarcus Cousins on. You're not losing basketball games because of him. You're not. Now, you might not win a championship if the team around him isn't good enough. Sacramento is evidence of that. But you are not losing a shot at the crown because of DeMarcus Cousins.
I mean, look, it's not just the team around him and their talent, because he's played with some talented players, although on no great teams yet, obviously. It's also the kind of personalities around him, strong veteran leaders and those sorts of things, that would be able to harness his ability and not let him get out of control. I do wonder at this point whether his personality is working against his best interests, even in terms of winning and losing games, when you look at the won-loss records of his teams. They have been, when you have a talent as transcendent as his, you'd think that his teams would win a little more. That said, it's not just about being the best player, but when you're going to have to wind up paying him max money and give up resources in order to acquire him, he has to be one of the two. He has to be in the absolute nucleus of that team, one of the centerpieces. He has the ability to do it for Popovich, maybe for the right coach who he buys into, but not just for anybody.
I got to tell you something. We talk about DeMarcus Cousins. Let's be clear about something here. The man doesn't miss too many games. He shows up. Mm-hmm. You understand? Durability, not just skill. He's on the court. He's averaging 28. He's averaging 28. I mean, this brother's on another level, and we have to appreciate it. And I really, really think somebody like the Washington Wizards, 28 and 10, shooting 45% from the field and 35% from three-point range as a big man.
He's an excellent player. If he wants to be a great player, he better start winning.
You know who else showed up? Stephen A. Smith. So in case you missed it yesterday, Stephen A. caught up with James Harden in Houston, shut off his jump shot.
I didn't show anything off. I missed everything.
He might want to get back in the gym real quick. Harden trolling Stephen A. yesterday with this tweet. Please, Stephen A. Smith, stick to your day job. First take.
You know what? Coming from James Harden, he could say that. I deserve it. I mean, I showed up in front of him. Now, I want to let everybody know the condition. He would not let me practice.
Excuses.
And he made me go outside the three-point line. I'm shooting an NBA three. I haven't even had a chance to practice. That's pretty bad. But in the end, he got me with this one line. As much stuff as you talk about everybody else, and you think you think you're gonna get out here and not have to make shots, please. He got me with that one. And not only that, right now, if the season were to end, he would be my league MVP. So there's nothing I can say. James Harden, listen, I got to something about James Harden. I deserved it. I got to sit up there. I
was going to stand up for you, but, you know, I mean, I think it's pretty, no warm-ups and all that stuff. An NBA three-point shot, he missed them, but he looked pretty good shooting them. And considering you cover the NBA, you talk smack about everyone. Not everyone would go out and show up and do that.
No, I will not back up. He got me, though. If there's somebody that could talk about me, it's James Harden. It was a very,
I just want you to go back out and redeem yourself. Can you do that for us?
He wants me to do it, too. He said he's going to call me out to do it. Maybe before the playoffs. That's right. I'm going to hit the gym first, and I'm going to hide from him this weekend. I don't need anybody to see me All-Star weekend. I don't need to be out there shooting this weekend.
The Spurs beat the Pacers the other night in Indiana, ensuring a record 20th consecutive winning season. And there's a relevant lesson in that win and that streak. The lesson's about luck. The 97 Spurs finished third worst in the league, but got lucky, won the draft lottery, and with it, Tim Duncan, which is one of the luckiest breaks in NBA history. And then the Spurs owner, a man whose name you don't know, did something amazing. He let extremely skilled basketball people make something out of his good fortune. R.C. Buford and Greg Popovich found Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili well down in the draft order and acquired Kawhi Leonard in a draft day trade, installed systems at both ends of the floor, and here we are 5 chips later. Contrast that now with a team which has recently gotten lucky itself. Maybe not Duncan lucky, but pretty damn lucky. In 2015, the New York Knicks were the NBA's second worst team, but fell to 4th in the draft. Luckily, because the blue-chip college stars were picked 1, 2, 3 that year, and an unheralded but potentially transformative franchise cornerstone named Kristaps Porzingis fell right into their laps. And here's where the stories of the Spurs and the Knicks diverge. You don't know who owns the Spurs. He doesn't front his own rock band. He hasn't banned Malik Rose or Vinny Del Negro from his arena. He identified Pop and R.C. Buford, then got the hell out of the way so they could capitalize on his extraordinary luck. You do know who owns the Knicks. He wants you to know him. He does front his own rock band. He does make a public mess with Knicks alumni. He has yet to hire the right people, and if he did, you think he would quietly back away and leave them alone to turn his good luck into a great franchise? Did I mention he's 61 and fronts his own rock band? And that's the lesson about luck. Every owner catches big breaks. It's the ones who are smart enough and big enough to let the experts turn luck into success who win. Owners who don't turn the spotlight over to the pros, we call those owners losers. For the record, Peter Holt is the name of the Spurs owner. Ever heard of him, Jim Dolan?
Drop the mic, Max Kellerman.
Good job, good job, good job.
Always
I like
strong,
that.
always provocative. Love that right there. First Take on the road at the NBA All-Star Game catches live in New Orleans this Friday, February 17th. We're on the 4th floor of the Riverview Room located at 600 Decatur Street. Doors open 7:30 a.m. local time. The show starts at 9 a.m. Pack the house. We'll be down in New Orleans. We'll also have John Wall with us out there, so we're looking forward to that. That was some strong stuff, Max.
Well, thank you very much. John Wall, the best guard in the East, not on the Cavs.
That is true.
There.
Good. That is one way to look at it.
You guys will be in New Orleans tomorrow.
I think so. Let's hope we get there.
So I'll say bye to you now. But we'll be back. Have a wonderful night. We'll see you guys in the morning. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. Catch First Take weekdays 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific on ESPN. Have a great day, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
There is more to me, Queen Eliara of Elfgard, than my elven magic. Just as there's more to Geico than saving you money, Geico also gives you 24/7 access to licensed agents online, on the phone, or on the Geico app. And while I am a mighty elf queen, I am also a mighty big fan of barbecue potato chips. Minions! More smoky mesquite.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.